You've heard of food poisoning, but these deaths are on a whole different level. In this episode, we're talking about bizarre, real-world deaths where eating, handling, or just standing too close to food turned routine moments into sudden, irreversible outcomes. It was March 15, 2016, inside a small studio apartment in Seoul's Gangnam district. Traffic noise filtered in through a closed window, while a phone camera recorded a lunchtime live stream. The setting appeared routine, with no one else present inside the apartment. The apartment belonged to Kim Ji-eun, age 26. She taught conversational English at 3 private academies, commuting across the city from early morning until late evening. Her pay barely covered rent for her roughly 130-square-foot apartment. She had moved to Seoul in 2014 after finishing a linguistics degree overseas, expecting independence and steady work. Her income remained inconsistent, and she relied on careful budgeting to manage basic expenses. Ji-eun was quiet in person, but more animated during live streams. 6 months earlier, she began posting late-night mukbang videos from her apartment, eating large and spicy portions for a small but steady income. Her channel stalled near 950 subscribers, and comments pushed for riskier content. That Tuesday, she announced a live octopus challenge to mark nearing 1,000 followers. She bought 6 live baby octopuses that morning. The vendor warned her to chew thoroughly. She acknowledged the warning and completed the purchase. By mid-afternoon, she prepared her setup. No weather advisories or emergency alerts were in effect. No one else was in the apartment. She went live at 3:30 p.m. About 20 viewers joined as she lifted the container toward the camera. The octopuses moved constantly, their tentacles gripping the sides of the container. Comments on the stream urged her to eat all of them at once. At 3:47 p.m., Ji-eun placed all 6 octopuses into her mouth at the same time. The reaction was immediate. Suction cups attached to the wet surfaces of her tongue, inner cheeks and gums, tightening as the animals reflexively anchored themselves. One octopus slipped past her tongue toward the back of her mouth as she attempted to speak. As she opened her mouth, one octopus pressed against the back of her throat. Its tentacles spread outward and flattened across the airway opening. Multiple suction cups sealed against the soft tissue near the vocal cords, forming a complete blockage. Air movement stopped at that point. She paused briefly and then raised both hands to her mouth. Her expression changed rapidly. She attempted to cough, but no sound came out. Repeated gagging motions followed, causing strong throat contractions that pulled the remaining octopuses tighter against the tissue. Their movement made her attempts to grip and pull uncoordinated. She grabbed at the tentacles, but the suction cups held. As she pulled, the tissue inside her mouth tore. Blood appeared at the corners of her lips and dripped onto the table. The camera showed her hands shaking, her jaw forced open, and the tentacles still moving while no breathing was visible. Ji-eun stood suddenly, knocking over her chair. She staggered forward while clutching her throat. No air passed. Her lips darkened. She dropped to her knees and fell forward onto the wooden floor. Her body shook as oxygen deprivation triggered muscle spasms. The convulsions lasted approximately 90 seconds, then movement stopped. The live stream continued. Viewers typed messages, uncertain whether the situation was staged. At 4:10 p.m., one viewer contacted emergency services after noticing no movement for several minutes. Paramedics arrived 8 minutes later. They found Ji-eun face down and unresponsive, with octopus tissue still obstructing her airway. Attempts to remove the obstruction and restore breathing were unsuccessful. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The post-mortem examination showed the airway was fully blocked by an octopus lodged just below the vocal cords. The suction cups formed a tight seal that prevented airflow. Additional injuries inside the mouth and throat were caused by suction tearing soft tissue. The cause of death was suffocation due to foreign body airway obstruction. Death would have occurred within several minutes of the blockage. Police documented the scene and ruled the death accidental. Ji-eun's parents were notified overseas. They learned about her live streaming activities afterward. Her laptop contained notes outlining future food-related challenges. The platform later added warning notices to similar content. Not every fatal food incident involves a kitchen or a camera. In one orchard near the Singapore border, danger came from straight above. It was August 23, 2017, at a commercial durian farm in Johor, Malaysia, just across the border from Singapore during peak harvest. Mature trees stood over uneven ground, branches heavy with ripening fruit. Falling durians were a known hazard, and workers were expected to avoid standing beneath trees during active drops, especially during sudden wind shifts. Under one of those trees was David Tan. He was 34 years old and had previously worked as an accountant until his position was eliminated in 2015. After losing stable employment, he began posting food-related videos online. His channel had been active for 2 years and had 127 subscribers. He lived with his elderly mother in a narrow shop house and relied on short-term jobs for income. His videos increasingly focused on unusual food experiences rather than reviews. That morning, David crossed into southern Malaysia to film content centered on eating durian directly where it was grown. Farm staff had marked several trees with warning tape indicating active fruit drop. A weather advisory issued earlier that day warned of intermittent gusts associated with seasonal storms. Workers were harvesting in other sections of the property and advised visitors to stay on cleared paths. By early afternoon, David moved away from the main access area. He set his phone on a small tripod near a dirt service path and stood beneath a mature durian tree with multiple large fruits still attached. He positioned himself directly under the canopy while speaking toward the camera, occasionally looking upward at the fruit above. At 2:34 p.m., a gust of wind passed through the upper canopy of the orchard. The area beneath the trees was uneven, with packed dirt and scattered fallen husks from earlier harvests. Several branches overhead were still heavy with mature fruit, a known hazard during peak season. One durian, weighing an estimated 10 to 12 pounds, tore free from its stem. It fell from roughly 25 to 30 feet, accelerating rapidly as it dropped through the branches with no obstruction or netting in place to slow or deflect it. David reacted to the movement overhead and looked up seconds before impact. The durian struck the crown of his head. Later investigation revealed that the spiked shell punched through the scalp and fractured the skull instantly. Several spikes drove deep into the bone, collapsing it inward. The force snapped his head forward with enough violence to fracture the upper cervical spine near the base of the skull. The durian split apart on impact, scattering shell fragments and blood across his shoulders in the dirt path. David dropped straight down and then pitched forward onto the ground. There was no attempt to brace or break the fall. His body went completely limp. Blood spread quickly beneath his head, soaking into the soil. 2 farm workers witnessed the fall from approximately 30 feet away and ran over, stopping when they saw the head injury. No first aid was attempted due to the visible trauma. Emergency services were contacted at 2:36 p.m. Paramedics arrived at 2:44 p.m. and confirmed there was no pulse or breathing. Death was pronounced at the scene. The post-mortem examination found extensive skull fractures with durian spikes penetrated through the fractured skull into the brain tissue. The impact also caused a high cervical spine fracture that severed the connection between the brain and spinal cord, stopping breathing immediately and leading to rapid cardiac arrest. The medical examiner determined that death was instantaneous and occurred at the moment of impact, with no evidence of survival after the strike. Authorities ruled the death accidental, and his mother was notified that evening. Farm management expanded restricted zones beneath fruiting trees, added additional warning signage, and adjusted harvest procedures to limit access during active drop periods. The video recorded on David's phone was reviewed by investigators to confirm the sequence of events, preserved as part of the case file, and later deleted at the family's request after the investigation was closed. The accident was treated as an unavoidable food-related hazard, long understood and routinely ignored. The next incident unfolded in a place built for crowds and order, where food itself became the mechanism of harm, written into the rules and overlooked in full view of everyone watching. It was August 14, 2014, at a regional fairground in Des Moines, Iowa. A small sponsored stage buzzed with crowd noise and fried food smells as the routine contest began. Rebecca Walsh, known as Becca, was 28 years old and worked weekdays as an insurance claims adjuster in Cedar Rapids. Her job involved reviewing collision photos, repair estimates, and injury reports, often while speaking calmly to distressed callers. The work was steady and repetitive. Outside of work, she competed in amateur eating contests, focusing on endurance rather than speed. She did not rank nationally, but entered events consistently and finished most attempts. Becca trained alone in her apartment using frozen foods and timed drills, forcing herself to swallow quickly with minimal chewing. Vomiting during practice was frequent and unhidden. Her boyfriend, Josh Walsh, recorded several sessions on his phone, posting short clips to social media. She registered for a late summer corn dog contest at a regional fair weeks in advance. The event rules listed 15 corn dogs in 8 minutes with no required pauses. The contest was an unsanctioned amateur event run by a local sponsor, without professional competitive eating league oversight. The contest used freshly prepared corn dogs served on thin wooden sticks. Multiple contestants commented aloud that several sticks had surface cracks while lining up. A volunteer reminded participants that removing the sticks was recommended for safety. Becca acknowledged the instruction, but did not remove the sticks. She was assigned Station 3, facing the grandstand, with approximately 200 spectators seated directly in front of her. At the buzzer, Becca began eating rapidly. She dipped, bit, and swallowed with minimal chewing. By the 4-minute mark, judges recorded 11 corn dogs consumed, placing her second. Her breathing was heavy and sweat ran down her face. She continued eating without slowing and began biting through sticks instead of removing them. During the 12th corn dog, she bit down while the wooden stick remained embedded in the batter. The stick fractured under pressure, sending a jagged shard approximately 3 inches long sideways into her throat. The remaining food mass lodged above it, creating a complete obstruction of the esophagus and upper airway. The splinter punctured the esophageal wall, causing severe internal bleeding and swelling that rapidly closed the airway. Blood filled her mouth almost immediately, spilling past her lips as she tried to inhale. She froze briefly, then brought both hands to her neck, pressing hard as if trying to clear an obstruction. Some spectators clapped, mistaking the reaction for part of the event. Judges hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Becca stood up from the stool. Blood ran down the front of her shirt and onto the floor. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but made no sound. She gestured once toward her throat, then lost balance and fell backward off the stool. She struck the ground flat on her back. Blood and saliva pooled around her mouth and chin. Her chest heaved several times without airflow. Her legs kicked twice in short, uncontrolled movements before stopping. A contest judge called 911 at 2:18 p.m. Paramedics stationed elsewhere on the fairgrounds arrived approximately 6 minutes later. Becca was unresponsive on arrival. The airway obstruction remained in place. Blood loss was extensive. Resuscitation attempts were unsuccessful. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The autopsy found compacted corn dog material lodged in the mid-esophagus. A wooden splinter had perforated the esophageal wall, causing severe internal bleeding and airway collapse. Death occurred from asphyxiation combined with internal hemorrhage, estimated within 3 to 4 minutes of injury. Following the incident, stick-based foods were removed from all eating contests at the fair. Becca's employer denied a life insurance claim after determining competitive eating was an undisclosed high-risk activity. Josh later advocated for on-site medical staff at similar events. The death was ruled accidental, caused by contest conditions and participant actions. Becca's death changed contest policies, but the pattern stayed the same. Food didn't need competition to become lethal. In the next case, there was no timer, no prize, and no warning. Just heat, sugar, and a body pushed past a limit it didn't signal in advance. We've got more cases ahead in this series, so subscribe if you want to see how ordinary situations quietly line up the conditions for sudden, irreversible deaths. It was July 18th, 2015, at a low-lying salt basin in eastern California. Afternoon heat pressed across the parking area as visitors drifted between cars and pale flats, unaware nearby. Sarah Young was 16, an honor student from Phoenix known for routine and structure. She organized family trips, tracked expenses, and kept detailed notes for school planning. Teachers described her as calm and methodical. She planned to pursue medicine and spent summers tutoring younger students. She had a history of mild childhood asthma, but had not experienced symptoms in years. During the trip, she managed schedules and reminders while her parents focused on sightseeing. The family arrived at the basin shortly after 2:30 p.m. A digital display near the parking area showed the temperature hovering near 127 degrees. Rangers advised limiting time outdoors, drinking water continuously, and moving slowly across the flats. Sarah reported feeling slightly dizzy, but remained standing beside the family vehicle while her parents walked several yards away to take photographs. A nearby concession stand sold bottled water and frozen desserts. Sarah's father returned with a pint of strawberry ice cream and handed it to her before stepping away again. She remained near the car, standing in full sun with little shade. Heat radiated off the metal door panels and rose from the ground around her ankles. She removed the lid and began eating quickly. The ice cream was extremely cold. The first few bites caused sharp tooth pain that made her flinch, but she continued without slowing. The contrast between the frozen food and the surrounding heat was abrupt and intense. She finished the entire pint in less than 2 minutes. Seconds later, she paused and lifted one hand toward her throat. At first, it appeared she was coughing. She opened her mouth as if to inhale, but no sound came out. Her chest rose once without drawing in air. Witnesses nearby later said her face changed suddenly, the color draining as she tried again to breathe. Her airway had closed. Medical reviewers would later explain that the sudden ingestion of extremely cold food in severe heat had triggered a reflex spasm of the vocal cords, a rare condition known as cold-induced laryngospasm. The muscles of the throat tightened involuntarily, sealing the airway shut. Sarah staggered forward, one hand pressed against her neck. She attempted to speak but could not produce sound. The empty ice cream container slipped from her fingers and fell onto the pavement. Her steps slowed and became uneven. She swayed once, then collapsed forward near the edge of the parking area. Her face struck the ground, causing her nose to bleed. Her body stiffened briefly, then jerked once as her brain began reacting to the lack of oxygen. Her mother reached her first and attempted to lift her head, but Sarah was unresponsive. A nearby visitor called emergency services at approximately 2:48 p.m. Park staff arrived within minutes and moved her into partial shade. They attempted to open her airway and administer oxygen, but her throat remained tightly closed. Her breathing was shallow, irregular, and rapidly weakening. Emergency medical services arrived at 3:02 p.m. Advanced airway support was attempted, but the vocal cord spasm persisted. Cooling measures were initiated as her oxygen levels continued to fall. Within minutes, her heart rhythm became unstable. Resuscitation efforts were unsuccessful. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The post-mortem examination found no evidence of trauma, poisoning, or congenital vascular abnormalities. There were no signs of choking or aspiration. Medical examiners noted a remote history of childhood asthma and determined that a sudden reflex closure of the airway had caused acute asphyxiation. Environmental heat was listed as a contributing factor. The official cause of death was ruled accidental, triggered by ingestion of extremely cold food in extreme heat. Reviewers later documented the case as an uncommon but recognized medical phenomenon. Educational materials were circulated among emergency physicians to highlight the risk of cold-induced airway spasm in severe temperatures. Park operations remained unchanged. The family later funded voluntary airway and reflex disorder screenings through a private foundation. Sarah's travel notes were found inside the vehicle later that evening, ending mid-sentence. The death was recorded as a rare medical event, with no changes made to park procedures. The next case began very differently, not with an accident, but with a food challenge designed to test how much pain someone could endure. It was September 29, 2018, outside a newly opened restaurant in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. Late afternoon temperatures hovered just above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with heat radiating off the concrete sidewalk. Folding tables and a small raised platform had been set up for a promotional event. Nothing about the setup suggested immediate medical danger. One of the diners was Angela Rodriguez, 39, a grocery department manager at a large retail store in Tempe. She worked 50-hour weeks, often more during holidays, overseeing inventory, schedules, and overnight freight deliveries. After her divorce in 2016, she supported her 2 teenage daughters alone. At work, she was known for taking on extra tasks and rarely declining challenges. Spicy food had become a regular part of her life. Co-workers frequently dared each other with hot sauces and peppers during breaks. Angela consistently participated. She had eaten ghost peppers and concentrated sauces at home without medical supervision. She did not carry antacids or emergency medication. Several co-workers repeated past jokes about her tolerance, often in public settings. The restaurant advertised a promotional stunt that afternoon. Anyone who could finish a full plate of Carolina Reaper peppers would receive a free meal and have their photo posted on the restaurant's wall. There was no waiver and no medical screening. Staff verbally warned participants that the peppers were extremely hot. Relief drinks were delayed briefly as part of the promotion. Angela volunteered. Her daughters stood nearby. At 4:15 p.m., a plate holding a single whole Carolina Reaper pepper was placed in front of her. The pepper was deep red, wrinkled and glossy, measuring just over 2 inches long. Instead of cutting or biting it, Angela lifted it and swallowed it whole within seconds, drawing loud reactions from onlookers as phones were raised and staff continued watching. Within moments, Angela bent forward sharply. She began coughing in rapid, forceful spasms that prevented full breaths. Her eyes watered heavily. Thick nasal discharge followed. She clutched her upper chest as retching movements folded her torso inward. Her skin color shifted from flushed red to a darker purple tone. The coughing escalated. Witnesses later stated she appeared dizzy and unsteady. The violent coughing fits left her briefly disoriented and unable to control her balance. She attempted to step backward while still coughing continuously. Tears blurred her vision. Her legs failed to coordinate properly. Behind her was the raised platform edge used for the promotion. She missed the step and slipped backward off the platform. Her upper body rotated as she fell, and the back of her head struck the concrete edge below. The impact hyperextended her neck, causing failure at the base of the skull. She landed motionless. For several seconds, bystanders hesitated, assuming it was part of the promotion. When Angela did not move, a restaurant employee approached. Her arms were slack, and her neck was bent at an abnormal angle. One of her daughters tried to reach her before being stopped. Emergency services was called immediately. Paramedics arrived approximately 6 minutes later, but Angela had no pulse. Her pupils were fixed and dilated. Her airway was unobstructed, but the neck injury was obvious. Paramedics determined the injuries were incompatible with life and pronounced her dead at the scene. The medical examiner determined the fall caused a complete separation between the skull and the first cervical vertebra. The spinal cord was severed instantly. Death occurred on impact. The stomach lining showed chemical irritation consistent with concentrated capsaicin exposure. The cause of death was listed as traumatic cervical spine dislocation due to a fall during a restaurant promotion. Toxicology showed prescription pain medication for chronic back strain. No alcohol was present. The restaurant ended all food challenges immediately. Footage from the event continues to be used in safety training. Thanks for watching. If you want to continue through more Fatal Files cases, the next story is waiting right here.